This expansion is about the greatest threat in the Warcraft universe, the Burning Legion, attempting to destroy all life on Azeroth and the planet itself. It was really important for us to have the Burning Legion in this expansion, and the natural place for us to go was the Broken Isles.
We wanted the Legion invading Azeroth itself. We wanted the Legion crashing down and threatening our homelands, but in a place we hadn't seen before. Broken Isles is an opportunity for us to go very, very deep back into World of Warcraft's history, back to the War of the Ancients 10,000 years ago, and see some of the places where these climactic battles happened.
During the Great Sundering 10,000 years ago, much of the Broken Isles sank into the sea, so half of it remained above but shattered and formed kind of an island chain. Gul'dan, the warlock, raised the broken part from the bottom of the sea, bringing the Tomb of Sargeras to our world.
The Broken Isles is the location of our very powerful Pillars of Creation. We find out that this is going to be a central component of how to defeat the Legion and seal back the Tomb of Sargeras.
The history of this area is so strong, and it's always been a hope of mine that we would get an opportunity to visit this landscape, visit the Broken Isles. We get to understand a little bit more about what happened there.
It used to be the epicenter of Night Elf civilization, and basically ever since it was destroyed in a cataclysmic event, pretty much no one has been there.
We're trying to define what is the lore. The lore tells us why things look the way they do.
Broken Isles is visually stunning. It fits perfectly with the whole storyline behind Legion.
We want to be able to feature different types of environments, and the best way to do that throughout an expansion is to actually have separation.
The continent of the Broken Isles is comprised of Nazuna, Val'sharah, High Mountain, Stormheim, and Suramar. We have gone to great lengths to make sure that the game feels open and explorable.
Broken Isles was an interesting one from a world-building perspective. There's so many key landmarks to this landscape. That was a real driving factor in how we ultimately put it together.
As players delve deeper into the quest and the backstories, they'll start seeing how sort of all these ancient civilizations, Night Elf, Naga, Highborn, how they all fit together.
Telling the story of those different cultures. There is a lot of back and forth that goes on between environment and with level design, so that we can help settle on how that color palette, how the lighting, how the textures, all that's going to fit together.
Nazuna is the first zone that we started to make in this expansion. Anytime we start a zone, we like to look at real-world examples. So with Nazuna, we were thinking a little more Greek Isle, a lot of like olive trees and that sort of like broad pastures that you would see. But then we added a lot more to it. We added all the Night Elf culture.
Nazuna is a zone that feels very inviting and very beautiful. As players delve deeper into its dark secrets, they'll find out that not all is as it seems. These ancient Night Elf lands might have been cursed, and there's many Night Elf spirits that can't find peace.
Nazuna, I think it could be summed up as kind of like abandonment. A ghost town kind of thing, but it's a Night Elf ghost town. Something's not right. Everybody left in a hurry, and they haven't come back.
Nazuna was a really challenging zone to make. This wildly varied, beautiful landscape that wasn't overly colourful. We're kind of aiming for this Greco-Roman Arcadian feel with long, sweeping mountain ranges. But at the same time, it was ripped apart by this tragedy. Ultimately, the team really managed to kind of pull it together.
Val'sharah is thoroughly druid, very magical. When our concept artist was working on the trees for that zone, he had these majestic, giant trees, and as soon as I saw that, I was just so floored.
Val'sharah is one of our more forested zones in Broken Isles. I think one of the more interesting things about Val'sharah is that it's actually one of the first opportunities we've had to really show what it's like when the nightmare gets unleashed on Azeroth.
Val'sharah is the idea of druidism taken to its nth potential, and is now corrupted and threatened by the nightmare.
There's a lot of places of it that are still luscious forest, but you really feel what parts are really being overcome by the nightmare, and the other parts that are still like a safe place to be as you're exploring and questing through Val'sharah.
In Val'sharah is a world tree known as Shaladrisil. This world tree was feeding nature. With the Legion's arrival, the world tree has fallen into corruption. The Emerald Nightmare is now a wound at the heart of this world tree that is threatening to overtake all of Val'sharah and ultimately the world. So the world tree really serves as a symbol of both hope and hopelessness.
Val'sharah is the epitome of fantasy and druid forest. It's the jewel that we wanted this expansion to have. But we didn't quite see what Val'sharah really was until everything came together. The buildings, the creatures that were in the zone, all of those elements had to be there for us to complete the vision.
The High Mountain Tauren are the keepers of the relic of Khaz'goroth. This is the pillar of creation that we need to take out the Tomb of Sargeras.
High Mountain ties together the region geographically in terms of elevation, but it's also where we put all our lore for Tauren, and we really let players experience that culture. It's always challenging to create a zone with a lot of verticality in it.
For High Mountain in particular, especially since it has a whole bunch of different elevation changes, we'll identify what could affect the sound at that elevation, whether or not it's trees or doesn't have trees, whether it's next to a coast, whether it's next to a canyon or a crevasse or at the summit.
What we really wanted to capture with High Mountain was this enormous, majestic, rocky mountain peak. You can clearly see its influence on the world around it.
Throughout the whole expansion, you can look at the highest peak in High Mountain and say, hey, that's where the center of the expansion is.
It's one of those zones that landed pretty squarely on the original concepts. Our end result is really, really strong.
Stormheim is the home of a sect of Vrykul that left Northrend thousands of years ago to escape the curse of flesh that was cast upon them, as well as to find what they would consider their holy land. Amongst them, there is one leader, and he is their God King, because he speaks for both heaven and hell, and his word is law.
In Stormheim, the player is needing to go into the heart of the Vrykul kingdom to obtain one of the other Titan relics that will be needed at the Tomb of Sargeras, and this is against a backdrop of Queen Sylvanas attempting to secure her afterlife.
As players that are familiar with the Vrykul know, we'll get to find out the relationship between the Vrykul and the Valkyr, and what happens to Vrykul after they meet glorious death in combat, and we're really, really playing with that idea of exploring their afterlife, both good and bad.
The Vrykul believe in victory and glory and death, and only the most honorable will ever reach the halls of valor.
It'll be the epitome of what the Vrykul would have imagined for their heaven. You will be able to go to Helheim through the Mystic Temple, which is a fantastic, interesting area. That is probably one of my favorite POIs. So it's going to be a nice stark contrast for the mood and lighting.
We kind of wanted this split-level feel to Stormheim. We're down low, it's very rocky, coastal, rough seas, and up high on the highlands, it's a little bit more mysterious. We also wanted this very ancient, old feel to make sure that we represented the Vrykul, having been here for quite some time, that they had ancient roots here, and it really helped shape the landscape.
The Broken Isles was once known as Suramar. This vast, sprawling night elf civilization that lived there were able to actually build a shield of such tremendous power to keep out the world's sundering. Night elves of this area for 10,000 years have lived in this gigantic magical bubble.
Suramar is one of the zones in the expansion that will feel very, very much developed, very structured. It's an urban environment.
The other wonderful thing about Suramar, it is a seafaring city and has canals running through the city streets with boats. We make it at night, like it's being lit by the moon. So we've got these beautiful, very subdued blues and moonlight colors, but then we're bringing in warms like the oranges and the firelight to underlight it. So it's just going to be just a very dramatic, beautiful zone.
It's probably the most ambitious zone we've set out to do. It was a really tall order for the art team, and they were really excited about chasing this down. I think it's one of the best zones we've ever put together.
For this expansion, we're actually doing something very different. It's up to the player to figure out for themselves what zone they want to tackle first. It's the first time we've ever sort of given players this unbounded exploration right off the bat.
Having the freedom to go to whichever zone you want to go to and kind of decide the order you want to play it, that's pretty powerful.
We want this to be the crowning jewel of expansions we've made thus far. We really wanted to give the players a sense of exploration, that this is their world to explore in any way they choose. Honestly, it's magic, and it's something that we were really, really excited about.